Even if you could find people who are interested in the job, most of the people wouldn't be interested in an office position. But the founder of this company really insisted. He started asking for a higher salary and a title bump to help him make the decision. It completely caught the founder of our client by surprise. For a split second, I thought I lost the deal. Hey, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things recruiting. In this video, we're going to talk about my biggest placement deal to date. But before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe, as it's completely free and really helps us kickstart this channel. The job. Early this year in January, we were approached by a very successful D2C consumer electronics company in New York City who needed help hiring a lead product manager. This company was going into hypergrowth, doing about 9 figures in annual revenue, and made high-quality consumer electronic products, and needed this person as soon as possible to help own and drive the roadmap of current and future products. The situation. Considering this was a D2C e-commerce brand with a physical product, I knew off the bat that this wasn't going to be a straightforward process compared to the typical software or technology product managers we normally represented. But for all of our clients, we will do our best no matter what and use every resource available to find the best talent across all jobs. We actually worked with them before and did a handful of placements in other departments, so we were already really familiar with who they are, their teams, and what their process consists of. So since they were a physical product company, they needed a product manager that not only had hardware experience and software experience, but they also had to have specific industry knowledge in the consumer electronics world and space, which made the target pool dramatically smaller. What made this particularly tough in the beginning was also the fact that they insisted we find someone in or near New York City to come to the office. Mind you, this was smack in the middle of peak COVID, and most, if not all, companies were hiring fully remote or not hiring at all. So trying to find someone and then convince them to make a commute into the office in the middle of a pandemic was going to be a challenge, to say the least. Even if you could find people who are interested in the job, most of the people wouldn't be interested in an office position, but the founder of this company really insisted. As if they didn't make it tough enough, the initial salary band for this specific position was also on the lower side as well compared to what other professionals with the equivalent skill set and experience were paid on the market. For this position and the type of profile they were looking for, my team and I believed that an appropriate salary range would be in the $160,000 to $200,000 range on the upper end. But our client was only offering and willing to offer only about $150,000. After double and triple checking and doing additional research, finding someone who was willing to accept the position with a compensation package under market coming out of a similar consumer electronics startup who had both hardware and software experience and was willing to come into the office in the middle of a worldwide pandemic was going to be an interesting experience, to say the least. We asked the founder multiple times if he could be a bit more flexible or open-minded on some, if not all, criteria, and despite adequate logic and reasoning, he didn't budge, so we started a targeting and campaign to find good folks and try to do the best that we could. Not sure if you know much about the consumer electronics or consumer audio space, but most of the target and relevant companies were mainly in the Midwest or West Coast. The handful of companies that were around New York City were mainly in or around New Jersey at massive or older consumer brands like Samsung and Sony. And while these are great companies, they're completely different to a small and fast-growing startup that wanted people coming out of a startup like theirs. The founder of our client company and many other startup founders believe that a startup environment is so different in terms of processes and just how things get done that if we found someone who worked at a larger or older companies, they would have to be trained and adapt to a smaller or more fast-paced environment and wouldn't be able to ramp up quickly compared to those who only worked at smaller companies. Would love to also hear your thoughts about this as well. If you agree or disagree with this train of thought, please let me know and share your thoughts. Genuinely interested. We ended up doing several massive campaign pushes in the New York City market, and while we came across a couple relevant people, they were either not interested or happy at their current job. Most of the people that did respond were from backgrounds at larger and older companies that we suspected were not going to be the best fit. He mentioned that he actually would be open to seeing people from these larger companies, and even though I knew that the founder was willing to be open-minded with people coming out of these types of companies, deep down inside I knew that he was probably going to pass on them. So we went ahead, conducted our search and outreach, and reached out to a decent amount of people. While a few made it past the first round, none really made it any further. I tried to share that the target market and companies weren't around New York City, and we had to be open to consider remote for this position to improve the pipeline. The ones that we found around New York City certainly didn't want to go back into the office full time, and if anything, wanted to remain remote. No surprise there. The people that we also found were also looking for salaries much higher than the range our client was offering. So putting all of these things together, we didn't really get anywhere. Anyway, the founders in the company refused to budge, and we kept trying to dig around hoping to find a diamond in the rough. We picked up this role in January, worked the whole month of January and February, and kept finding the same results. We honestly felt like something had to change as we were going around in circles. After trying for 2 months straight and showing the same results to the founder, we decided to put this particular position on pause and focus our energy on other positions that were moving faster with more realistic parameters. February came and went, March came and went, first 2 weeks of April came and went, and in mid-April, the founder reached out to us again and asked if we could restart the search. But before I could ask if he was willing to be flexible, he told us that he was open to making this 100% remote. This was completely music to our ears, and sometimes it'll take a little time for founders or hiring managers to agree with their perspective. But once it clicks and we're aligned, we can go out and do what we do best and find great people. Long story short, we started another great campaign, targeted relevant companies and talent across the US, and the responses and inbound were fantastic and plentiful. The irony here though was that even though candidates from tier A companies were coming in and some did great in the interview process, the best candidate was from Boston, only several hours from New York City. If the founder was open to remote, we probably would have reached out to this particular candidate sooner. Who knows? Maybe if we did that, the candidate might not have been interested, so it all worked out how it played out. Process. The interview process was pretty interesting with this one. In the beginning, everything seemed to be aligned. The candidate wanted to be 100% remote and was okay with the initial salary range as long as there was equity. He was also very excited and happy about this position and the company. After the first couple of rounds, everything seemed to be going well and it looked like smooth sailing. We found out that he was interviewing at a couple other companies, but none of them were really that interesting to him and all of them were still very much in the early stages, which gave us the advantage of time if our client wanted to hire him. At every round, he seemed to really like the company more and more, and everyone on the company side seemed to really like him as well. Getting to the offer stage with this candidate was so painless and dramaless that I almost had to pinch myself on how smooth and easy this whole process was, and how we could have probably filled this role several months earlier if only the founder was willing to hire 100% remote and then be a little bit more flexible on the other criteria. Once we reached the offer, things started to get a little more serious. The candidate naturally was feeling the nerves and stress of accepting a new position and started to think it up so much in his head that he started to wonder if a new job in the middle of COVID was actually a good idea. The company he was at was much larger and was more stable, so he started thinking and wondering if it made sense for him to leave a stable job for a flashier new job at a riskier, smaller company. Not just that though, he also had a pretty substantial equity package at his current job. And while my client was going to also offer equity, they weren't going to roll that out until later this year. So he didn't really know how much he was going to get and what that would equate to, and only had the word of the founder that he was going to get equity. This didn't really make him feel too great, as this actually happened to him before in the past, where he ended up never getting any equity, so he couldn't help but actually feel really skeptical, no matter how much he liked our client. So to potentially offset the added risk of going with our client, he started asking for a higher salary and a title bump to help him make the decision, which makes sense, but it completely caught the founder of our client by surprise. $150,000 was more than they initially planned for this role, and the fact that my candidate is now asking for more was really going to be a test to my client on how badly he wanted to hire my candidate and how much he was willing to stretch. At first, the founder was completely against it, and for a split second, I thought I lost the deal. But after reminding the candidate about the main points aside from money, why he really liked my client compared to other opportunities, and reminding my client, the founder, on how important this position is and how much their whole team loved the candidate, we were able to bring them both back to the table. Right when I felt like things were back on track, the company then started to backtrack on the remote stance and started thinking about whether they should have the candidate commute or travel to the office once or twice a week, and justify it that Boston to New York wasn't really that long, it was a short trip. While that may have been fine for somebody else, our candidate recently bought a brand new house and was really enjoying his fully remote job currently so that he could spend more time with his family. So really coming down to New York City even once or twice a week or several times a month wasn't really going to work out for him. If you think that the candidate should have been more flexible or open-minded here, every company in our industry was on a hiring spree, and every good candidate on the market was getting hit up all the time, and the candidates knew this. If being remote was truly important for him, he could simply walk away, wait, and consider a couple more opportunities that would offer the same cash or more and offer him a 100% remote job. It was really hard to get the founder to finally agree to let this be 100% remote, but he was desperate for someone great. And while they interviewed many other candidates, our candidate was still the best fit overall by a significant margin. Ultimately, he agreed on keeping this 100% remote and bumped up the salary to $200,000 and offered the title of head of product, with an equity option and a whole benefits package and the whole works. This made our candidate super happy and he ended up accepting. Lesson learned. There were so many points that this offer could have failed. The candidate could have gotten cold feet and stayed with his current job, or he could have asked for an astronomically higher salary that was just impossible for the company. Or the founder and his team could have flipped and stayed firm on the in-office policy, or they could have just ended up finding and interviewing someone else that was a better fit, that was more affordable, and would have passed on my candidate. This whole process took a lot of patience, listening and understanding exactly what both the candidate and the founder wanted, and doing our best to create a scenario that it was a win-win for everyone. If the founder was also willing to be open-minded and be flexible on his criteria early on, he would also have a much easier time filling this role. In a world where everything went upside down due to the pandemic and the job market went from a complete halt to one that became insane with hiring and recruiting, it's more important than ever for younger and smaller companies to be flexible and pull out all the stops and think of creative solutions to attract and retain good talent. It's hard enough to compete against bigger companies with bigger pockets and perks, and now smaller companies have to do whatever they can to be competitive. With remote policy now an easy top 3 or top reason why people would look for a new job post-COVID, companies that were once a huge advocate for 100% in-office will now have to think about their office policy more than ever and factor it in with the recruiting process. Results. In total, from January to when the offer was closed, we ended up reaching out to about 109 people, of which 85 opened the emails, and of those 85, 59 people responded. Out of those responded, we submitted 12 people, and out of those 12, we got one offer that was accepted. With a salary of $200,000 and our placement fee of 18%, our placement commission came out to $36,000. All in all, this was one for the books, and I really enjoyed navigating this entire experience. Proud of our client for being flexible and proud of our candidate for taking that leap to a new job where he is absolutely crushing it now. If you like this video and want us to talk more about placement deals that we have done, please let me know and we would be happy to make more. If you have any more questions about recruiting, startups, or hiring in general, please comment below and I'll get back to you. I also try my best to post daily on Preston_Park on Instagram and TikTok, so definitely feel free to follow me. If you really enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed making this, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. It will really mean a lot. Thanks again, really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one.